into developing software and operations, and see how well they work. So the question you might be asking is why bother looking at other professions? We software guys are pretty awesome. I'll point you to way 3 of DevOps, experimentation. Is everyone familiar with the 3 ways of DevOps? So basically, just the 3 main practices that every software company should focus on in order to get maximum results. So knowing your flow of work from when it arrives as a new issue all the way till when it gets deployed and being monitored, so full life cycle. Second way is feedback loops. So putting as much in your system as possible to let you know if anything's failing or what feedback is from users or from your monitoring systems as much as possible, so you can continuously build a better system for your products. And then way 3 is experimentation. So trying out new things and seeing how well they either make your products better or make things worse. So not just products, but also your teams as well. So that's very, very quick of the 3 ways of DevOps. I can go on more in depth than that. The other reason why it's good to look at other professions and how they do things is building sort of a T-type knowledge base. So in a lot of modern teams, it's really there's a lot of pressure to incorporate different ways of thinking. A T-type person is someone who has a very broad set of knowledge, but not too deep, but has a specialization in one area that goes very deep. You might think of someone called the jack of all trades. That's someone that kind of has a dash built. They have a very broad set of skills in multiple areas, but nothing very deep. And then the I type of person who has just one set of skills that's very deep, but nothing too broad. So I would argue that building yourself as a T-type person and your teams is a very good practice to follow. So with that in mind as to why, let's talk about professions themselves. There's all kinds of professions. Obviously, in healthcare, manufacturing, construction, software itself. So I'll ask you guys, what do you think they all have in common? Feel free to put out your answers.
They all need to manage their things.
Manage their things?
Yeah.
True.
If they all have like workflows and processes that could be optimized.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's some kind of management structure, whether it's flat, hierarchical, whatever, some kind of structure to manage the processes and systems.
Yeah, totally agree. So
they can be your clients. So you can have the best knowledge about expectations about your products in IT when you look after other professions. Because sometimes when you are too close to your software, you can't see some things that you can learn from the other guys from other professions where you will actually be selling them those. So it's always good to listen to your customer.
Absolutely. So they have to have some sort of feedback to take in customer feedback, essentially. Yeah, totally. So those are definitely all valid answers. I'll say this. I'll say it's trust. Ultimately, in order to sell a service or a product, the person that's buying it from you has to trust that it's going to do what you say it does. Be you a dentist, that the person that you're drilling your teeth believes that you're capable of what you're doing in software, where us as professionals, when we sell our skills to the job market, or as teams, that we can actually execute on building a product for our clients or for our bosses or for our users. So in software, how do we gain that? So I put it to 3 main things. Of course, I paint with a broad brush, so feel free to disagree or agree with me on this. But timelines are always a thing, so it's always get it done yesterday. Also, we have to know a lot. We have to also keep up with an ever-changing set of things that we have to know. And also, I'd say creativity is a big one too, and we always have to find new ways to solve problems, be it with an existing code base or infrastructure, or with something new completely. So being able to attack things from different angles is especially important. And yeah, that's just a very brief list. Obviously, there's probably more things to add to it. But then that kind of makes me think of the question of who else has these sort of similar constraints in order to gain trust from essentially their end users. So I'd say doctors are fairly similar. They also have to know a lot of stuff. That's also always changing. They have pretty tight schedules, and they have to be fairly creative in how they solve problems. Lawyers, you might disagree or agree with me on this one, but essentially they have to know a lot about the law, and they have to attack problems from multiple angles in order to make coherent arguments. And of course, they're always pressed for time. And also, I'd say engineers and architects, sort of on the building side of things. They have to know, they have to know, ASHRAE standards, LEED certifications, building codes, etc. So, back in my history, I used to be down this route professionally. So, I can speak personally to some of these aspects as well. So, for purposes of time, I'm only going to go into one of these fields. So I'll just go into doctors and kind of break down sort of some of their practices and some experiments that you can do to test on your own teams and your own companies and stuff like that. So like I mentioned before, doctors have to know a lot of stuff. They have to continuously improve. They, quite frequently, if they work in a hospital or anything worth their salt, they have to specialize, but they still have a very broad base of knowledge to pull from, and they have to be able to present confidently to their patients in order to build their trust. Anyone here know anyone in the healthcare industry, loved one, family member? Yeah. So you probably relate to that pretty well. I mean, my wife, she's a nurse. She talks about a lot of the cultural stuff that they do in order to essentially gain the trust of parents or patients, family members, etc. And that kind of leads into the culture. So, of course, again, I paint with a broad brush here, but by and large, healthcare is a team sport. It takes a team of people in order to provide good healthcare. Very hierarchical. Now, I say this neither as a good thing or a bad thing. It's just an artifact of their structure. So take it or leave it with a grain of salt, however you guys think it applies to your own problems. And also, I'd say highly empathetic. It requires a lot more empathy than I think I can muster up. And then, of course, there's say for chain smokers that you hear about in nursing gossip, but there is a positive pressure to sort of practice what you preach in the healthcare community. And of course, they're very process heavy. So neither good or bad, just the way it is. So kind of thinking about that as a team, you can kind of break these down into experiments. So what do they do to essentially meet these cultural expectations? So sort of practicing what you teach in a health way. Standing desks, that's fairly obvious. Thing fairly lightweight, fairly low-hanging fruit to imagine how you might implement that. User charting, so taking your users and communicating in a similar way that doctors do, which might be interesting, and sort of looking at your processes in the same way that doctors look at their own processes and reiterating on those. So for implementation, let's talk about standing desks really briefly here. A standing desk, what's it cost nowadays? Like $300 probably, give or take, for a half decent one. So I'd say for the purposes of experimentation, you probably don't want to hork up that much for 2 or 3 or 10 for your team. So I found this Oristand site, which is pretty cool. You can get one mailed to you for like $30, and you just pop it on your desk and you can try it out. See if it works, see if you can do it all day or only for an hour at a time. And that way you kind of have a good feeling before you fully invest into setting desks for your team. There's a common practice that doctors and medical staff at large use called SOAP, so that they can communicate health information to themselves throughout times of their patients and to other healthcare professionals. So as it says up there, it's subjective items, objective items, assessments, and the plan for how they're going to treat the patient moving forward. So why is this interesting for us? Well, from a customer service point of view, it's a really good way to share rapid shared understanding, and it's a good way to really lightly build a profile for your users. That way you can kind of get a quick history of what's going on. And it's proven. It's been around since 1970. So healthcare industry has iterated on this, and there is software that has been built for this specific purpose. So there's definitely lots of exploration that can be done there. So if it's used by pretty much everyone in North America, it's probably pretty solid, I would imagine. So from a healthcare point of view, here's an example. Dr. Jones sees his patient. He's complaining about chest pain. So subjective, usually things like, how much does it hurt from 1 to 10? How are you feeling? What's going on? Sort of, what's up? Objective, what are the hard facts? What's their blood pressure? What does their lab test results say? What can be observed? And then sort of the high level for assessment. So more contextual information. Are they a smoker? Are they? How old are they? Have they recently been traveling? That sort of stuff. And of course, for a plan, what did I recommend to them as a doctor? What's sort of the plan going forward, and what should I check for next time? So next time you go to doctor's office writing notes, this is probably what they're writing down. And so how does this apply to software development and operations? Well, from a customer service point of view, and this is actually a case that happened in our company a week ago. So in our system, our users have access to folders. They can put documents in them, and they can share them, and they can move documents around, move folders around, etc. So users said that they shared a folder, and then the person who they shared with moved it, and they lost access to it. So, okay, let's see what's going on here. Okay, so for objective measures, let's pull together all the information we got. So we have email alerts and error logs. We use full story for user session data. Let's pull up any other old SOAP notes that we have to see if there's any sort of related issues to this, and sort of aggregate that and take a look what's going on. For the next section, we know that the user is from Calgary. We can tell that, okay, what browser is he using? He's using Internet Explorer, so okay, that's a big sign.
That explains
yeah.
a lot.
He hasn't had issues before, but so that's a big red flag. Let's take a look at that. And then the plan is to use our sort of standard user-driven intervention procedures before doing more manual interventions. So anything that the user might be able to do to rectify the problem themselves, and then if none of those work, then we move to sort of more invasive solutions. So that's sort of the notes that you could take in your teams. So what does this look like as a workflow? Well, there's a whole slew of tools you can use to accomplish this. So, user complains on intercom, Twitter, over your email to your face. Then whoever's got that problem assigned to them, they'll pull up any relevant information to use. So, previous SOAP notes, full story, their emails, Confluence, or Google Drive, if that's where you store it, doesn't matter. Obviously, you help the user, and then a team member will generate a new SOAP note and refile it with the others. And then you kind of create this feedback loop for every time that you deal with a new problem. You have a library of cases that you can look at to help you solve it. And this is a really good example where an experimentation from way 3 creates a new way to solution in DevOps. So another feedback loop within your system. So the final thing I'll give an example of is what I like to call process triage monitoring. So this is taking a look at your internal processes and seeing what can be optimized and how your team works. So we've been really fortunate to get some alpha technology from the guys who worked on Bitbucket. So come talk to me after, and I can see if I can hook you up if you're interested. But basically, what it does is it tracks like the number of builds that you've done, success rate, failure rate, the time that it takes to do build successfully, and the fail time. It does a bunch of other stuff too. I'll show in the next slide. Total consumption and average. So what I would like to point out is kind of right off the top here, you can see that the fail build is really pretty close to the pass build time. So that got us to think, okay, how can we reduce that? And what we noticed is the thing in our builds that failed the most was a node package checker. Basically, all it does is it checks our dependencies and see if any of them need to be updated before passing the build. So all we did is we just moved it farther up the build, and basically makes our builds fail faster, which is a good thing. It saves on developer time, and it also reduces the amount of build minutes that we use. So imagine that red line kind of being up close to the green line. Over a week, you're saving 30 minutes to an hour of build time. So more dollars in your pocket with that as well. Also, just to kind of show off what this technology can do, we have full commit activity, sort of per day. You can group them in different ways, per week, per month, etc. Number of pull requests created, builds, success rates, issues resolved and created. There's also the ability to see like average time to resolution, which is really handy as well. That way, just things like that allow our team to look at how we work in a more data-driven way. So when we do experiments, we can actually go back and see, okay, what were the results? Was our team faster this week? We can take a look even like low data points like this day right here. Were a lot of people working remotely that day? Was there a few people sick? What caused that dip in productivity? So definitely interesting way to take a look at that. And then of course coming down the line you'll be able to annotate specific data points to sort of create a diary of sorts. So yeah, if you're looking to like implement this form of experimentation to your own companies, it's a fairly simple process. Basically, just think of a core cultural piece that's important to your company. So, profit, speed, empathy, community, trust, if you will. What are some of the big ones you guys have in your company cultures, if you don't mind me asking?
I think probably that same grouping.
Yeah, and within just different words.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Googliness or whatever, whatever it might be. So just pick one to start with, and then consider like what other professions value that as well, and then you can say, okay, what do they do to meet that agenda essentially, and then from there you can either talk to people in industry directly and maybe figure out what their practices are. Do a quick Google search. I mean, for the soap, really took me like 20 minutes to figure that out. And then design some experiments to run in your teams. Rinse, repeat, and keep on going. And that's Joker's left, climbs to the right, and us in the middle. So yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Is Intercom your only channel to communicate with your clients? Because Intercom is aiming at having all those channels combined together into one good solution. I really like Intercom.
Intercom's great.
I see you using it too, so I was wondering if you are sticking to Intercom, or are you trying some alternatives to gather the feedback.
We also use Full Story pretty heavily. I don't know who's familiar with that. It's an awesome product. I'll suggest it till I'm blue in the face. You can actually see what users are trying to do and where the friction points are specifically. We also have email alerts, so the ability for someone to, first an email to trigger if they get like a 400 type of error, but also the ability to have users just click a different button rather than Intercom, even though Intercom essentially works the same way. So anything we get our hands on and test, absolutely, but I think Intercom's probably 80%.
Can Full Story do what Intercom does? Because our product was going to use Intercom.
Well, so intercom is like, you can directly talk to people.
Yeah.
Full story is more of people do stuff, you watch it sort of either live or afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. So you won't be able to talk to them directly. You can just but it does allow you to see like exactly what they're doing, and if you see them like clicking like 50 things trying to figure out where they're going, then it's pretty obvious there's a user experience issue.
Yeah.
So that's
And there's also there's a lot of cases where people are struggling, but they don't ask for help on intercom. So it's interesting what you can see, and like one of our UX guys in our group, he looks at that and observes, is like, maybe this button should go over here instead.
Okay.
And then they may not have complained about it, but based on that kind of user feedback, just observing what they've done, it's pretty powerful for that kind of sense.
So I guess the short answer is, yeah, why not both, right?
Yeah. Okay.
They kind of go together.
Did anyone else have any other questions?
I'm just wondering about what you're saying there. Does it capture any sensitive information, or it just shows, like, does it record what a client does within an application?
What buttons they click. But you can, if there's any sensitive content, you can, it can be filtered out. Yeah, for any issues.
Oh, cool. So you can like put something in the markup to be like, don't record this, and it doesn't record.
Like passwords and stuff. It'll just you'll see them like click into like a password to type it in.
But it's like a faded.
It's just like a bar, and you don't see anything. It's like a loading bar basically. That looks like while they're typing. That's it.
I had another one where you just read everything.
That was pretty special.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Yeah, like in our product, we there's the content editor, and that is actually blocked out, so we can't actually see any of the user's content inside their contracts and for our use case. So you can pick and choose what you want to allow yourself to see.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, it's good software. Like in the web is what 20 the web is 20 years old, right? So there's tons of stuff that we can learn from all of these things that are sometimes hundreds of thousands of years old, right?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's good. I had a talk like that a couple years ago where I compared scuba to ops. Right, same kind of thing. Like lots of things that we do in scuba totally apply to ops. So it's good. It's good to hear from another perspective.
Very cool.
One thing I heard is, like, one of the seminars I went to was, you can copy things that you like from other industries or even other companies. You just don't steal their IP, right? But you can copy. Like a conference of some sort, how they organize it, so you can steal ideas from other places. Like, people have been doing work forever. And it's like lots of things to pull upon. Just look at how things
And I think a great other industry to consider is the airline industry, because when you think about what they have to do and how few accidents they have, it's because when an accident does occur, the entire industry and everybody just kind of comes together. Okay, what can we learn from this? What processes do we implement? And they enforce them in a way that they have a discipline, I think, that's lacking in certainly, I think, most of the IT space. So I think there's a lot to learn there.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example because, geez, like, how much safer is flying gone since it's
one accident every 35,000 years statistically.
Jeez, that's impressive.
So
That's amazing.
it's orders of magnitude safer than any other form of transportation
Like
because of that effort.
It's safer than driving.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I've heard.
No comparison.
Well, now I got some homework to do. That's really awesome. I'm going to take a look at that because
Part of that ties back to what you said with DevOps before, right? The aviation industry has that not blame-free, but it's learning from the accident, right? And so they pull all of the emotion out of it. They say, what happened? How can we fix it? Yes, the human did it, but that's because we failed the process, right?
Well, and then the other distinction is the whole DevOps concept of fail faster. You can't do that in the airline industry.
But the culture part of the blameless
Yeah.
systems, right? That's really where that's I think probably where those guys stole it from.
Right.
that's a really cool concept. Yeah, I like that a lot. Super. Well, if no more questions, I I think I'll.
I have a quick one actually,
Oh,
and maybe
absolutely.
more for the group than anything. I think I'm the minority here that I'm not a developer. I'm on the operations infrastructure side of things. And you made an offhanded comment that stuck out to me when you're talking about the graphs when you're monitoring productivity and so forth. You saw that dip. That's measuring the number of committed builds.
That's correct. Yeah.
So,
Commits.
so are you saying then that if not enough builds are committed, then our team is not as productive?
No,
I'm
no,
just
obviously,
curious.
obviously not. Like some days, you do a lot of design work,
That's what I was
or
thinking,
the
yeah.
commits are larger in chunks because of the scope that they're involved. It's just a tool to sort of kind of figure out.
Right.
Okay,
I think
given
that. I just was curious because I know
So-
some managers will tend to use that kind of information against you.